The early life of my father was one in which he was born in a very small town. Its name was Brainerd, Minnesota. Initially, he was a student at the Minneapolis School of Art for the first couple of years, but then this is around the time of the Korean War, and the draft was around the corner, and so he decided to join the Air Force. And at that point was assigned to Chinook Air Force Base, where he was working in the PR department. And so that meant, in a sense, putting together posters and other items, and working with some other artists as well. You can imagine from a small town gradually going to Minneapolis, and then Chinook, where you have even more and more people from different parts of the country. You're getting exposed to new things, new ideas, new experiences. Continuing his art school when his tour was up was very appealing. And so then he went over to Yale, and he went straight to see Josef Albers himself, which is a little bit different. You're usually going through admissions, and Albers said, yes, I'll take a look at what you have, and goes through the portfolio. Okay, you're in. And that was, a sort of, that's huge.
The Rinehart School of Sculpture had been around as actually, I think, the oldest existing school of sculpture in the country, but it had been a figurative school for virtually its whole tenure. Bud Lee came to MICA. He was interested in really transforming MICA into a contemporary art school. And my understanding is that he called Josef Albers, who had been his teacher at Yale, and asked him to recommend a person for the Rinehart School of Sculpture. He wanted somebody that would come in and would respond to many aesthetics, and particularly the contemporary world of sculpture. And Albers recommended Norman for the position, and Bud hired Norman. The Rinehart School of Sculpture, when Norman arrived, I believe was still in the townhouses behind the main building. And it was shortly after he arrived that MICA acquired the Mount Royal Station. And Norman was instrumental in designing the sculpture facilities that were in the Mount Royal Station for the Rinehart School of Sculpture. And he began recruiting the best students in the country who had a real diversity of vision for sculpture and different media, different ideas about what sculpture should be.
When I first met Norman, I was so impressed by him being very different from my experiences with other instructors of sculpture in particular. He respected you, and this was your opportunity to be an artist, and he had no intentions of feeding you, maybe you should do it this way, or this would be a better way to do it, or something like that.
Norman drew the work out of people. He was a gentle person. His students all developed this huge respect for him as a teacher and as an individual, and he was very demanding of them.
Norman treated you not as a student, but as an equal. He just took you seriously, and that, in effect, made you take yourself seriously.
He was very generous of his time and his commitments, and Norman's priority, I think, was so heavily with the students that it somewhat interfered with his ability to do as much work as he might have otherwise done.
My father's approach was a little bit different with respect to constructivism, because he focused on the specific module, where a single module can be seen, and yet the collection of modules in itself produces a larger piece of sculpture. The geometric work that he did also required him to know quite a lot about geometry itself. Now, the quarter circle unit, very simple. From that, he could make, in a sense, quite a number of these and put them together. And this is another example, let's say, of putting together a series of quarter circle units. And it's, in a sense, an example of how one takes a simple, very simple form and then uses that in a collection to produce a piece of artwork. I think as all artists, there has to be a strong belief in the work that they do. And I think he was one that had total confidence in the work he did. Whether other people shared that confidence or appreciation was another matter. I'm very familiar with the construction of the Caterpillar. It was simply a part of discussions at the table. I remember it seemed to be rather a smooth type of effort. I mean, not as many challenges as perhaps maybe some other pieces of work. He started off with sketches of what he would like to do, and then this was under the 1% allocation for artwork. And so he applied for the commission and received it, showing in a sense he had the advantage of actual modules that he could present along with drawings, and had won the commission. And so it started to allow my father to work in larger spaces, in larger sets of units there. The key thing for my father was form was the beginning and end of all things. With that in mind, my father took that and then was able to make a correlation between the form and the name. But what I remember most is the utter agony of trying to come up with a name. And for any piece, especially those that are public pieces, there's an insistence, an understandable insistence on having a name. But boy, he sure struggled with names. At that time, this was the Corten type of steel, and it was very fashionable to use in bridges and other places, in part because it was meant, in a sense, to rust. In this particular case, the rust, much like bronze and a patina that gets formed, acts as a really protective type of material over the steel. Unfortunately, it seems like one of the things that was not anticipated was that since these were sealed units, the moisture that could occur, just the humidity inside, ended up damaging the unit.
I think it's wonderful that the Caterpillar is being restored and taken care of. And the fact is that during the period of time when we had a 1% for Art program, a lot of wonderful pieces were commissioned and installed around the city, and particularly pieces by significant local artists. And over time, many of those pieces have really become in disrepair. But I think it is fabulous to do this. It really is part of our legacy as a city. I mean, we have a lot of wonderful public art from the 19th century that is here in the city. And this was sort of the beginning of a contemporary sculpture program in the city. And it's long overdue, and I'm thrilled with the fact that there's some people finally taking it on and doing something about it, and this is one of the projects.
Having Norman as a teacher, a mentor, and a friend was very important to my life and how I chose to live it. And he was so impressive that he was able to make art till the very end, and that he never became cynical or anything like that. And he was an example that this is what great artists do. They incorporate making art with their life and having friends and family. He had a very long, well-lived life.